Greetings, I am the Harpy and I do book reviews. In today's video, we're going to be discussing an outline on the first law books by Joe Abercrombie that I plan on making a video series for. In this series of videos, we're going to be discussing whether or not I think Joe is a good author and why. We're going to be looking at different case studies. We're going to be discussing different plot elements, and we're going to be having some analysis portions. Getting started with what this series of videos is going to look like, we're going to start with character arcs. Predominantly focusing on Logan Ninefingers, we will cover all 6 narrative characters, in addition to 2 side characters. We're going to talk about the way that their narratives are shaped. We're going to get into the different specifics associated with how to hit your beats for a character arc. Once we're done with that, we're going to do foil relationships. We're going to compare. We're going to contrast. We're going to talk about the ways in which characters can be different or similar. Once we are done with foil relationships, we will be moving on to scene structure and plot structure. How do you hit your beats? Did Joe hit his beats? What is a beat? And how do you make a story do what you want it to? These are the different components that we will be discussing in this section. But afterwards, we're going to be moving on into diction, prose, style. This is where we're going to be talking about character voice. This is where we're going to be discussing the elements involved with building character voice, the way that Joe builds characters, and ultimately, again, whether or not Joe is a good author. After we are done with this section, we're moving into a little bit more of an abstract section. These are going to be the illusions. Can you pick up references that Joe is making? Can you not? Is he doing something or is he not doing something? Again, a little bit less concrete, but still a section that deserves conversation. Once we are done with that, we are getting into the full abstract, the liminal. We're getting into analysis. What is the first law about? If characters are built together by sentences in narrative arcs, and these narrative arcs are woven together to make books, and the books are woven together to make series, what does the series look like? What is that brocade? What is the painting? What is the forest for the forest? This is what we are getting in this section. And ultimately, I hope to answer the question again, is Joe Abercrombie a good author? We will now be discussing the prologue and first chapter, which happens to be Logan's first narrative chapter in The Blade itself. We will be framing the narrative arc of Logan from the prologue and the first chapter. Logan plunged through the trees, bare feet slipping and sliding on the wet earth, the slush, the wet pine needles, breath rasping in his chest, blood throbbing in his head. He stumbled and sprawled onto his side, nearly cut his chest open with his own axe, lay there panting, peering through the shadowy forest. So, the first thing that we're going to be paying attention to is that it's wet. Everything is sweaty, wetty. Blech. Everything is wet. Everything is slushy. The ground is muddy. Everything is going to have moisture on it. This is important for chapter 1. I'm highlighting it in the prologue because, again, it's important. The next thing that we are going to be looking at is a little bit further down. It's going to be a tree root hit Logan in the head hard and made his ears ring, right? This is head count number 1 for Logan Ninefingers. Krillin kill count for Dragon Ball Z. This is the same thing. We're going to do a head count. Every time Logan gets hit in the head, we're going to be counting it. Next thing we're going to be looking at is immediately after in that sentence, he had a knife somewhere, but he couldn't remember where. Logan's knife is on his waistband. It says so in chapter 1. We will be discussing it. But as of right now, Logan doesn't know who he is, where he is, what he is. Logan got hit in the head hard. And Logan trying to shake the fuzz out of his head and throttle the big flathead at the same time. This is not happening, all right? Logan Nine Fingers got hit in the head hard and is already kind of confused. He's already dazed, he's already confused. After that, we get into this section right here where it says it would take more than a few flatheads to put an end to Logan Nine Fingers. This is going to be a phrase I'm going to come back to again. Again, it's important in chapter 1. Prologue is semi-important, not super important. We're going to discuss. After that, we're going to get into this sentence. The only choice was between falling on rocks or falling on water, and that was a choice that more or less made itself. Once you've got a task to do, it's better to do it than to live with the fear of it. All right, cool. More to discuss. The last sentence I'm going to talk about in the prologue is going to be the last couple of sentences, actually, in the prologue. The water came up to meet him. It hit him in the side like a charging bull, punched the air out of his lungs, knocked the sense out of his head, sucked him in and down into the cold darkness. This is going to be our promise for Logan Nine Fingers, which is interesting because, again, prologues aren't supposed to be as important as the main narrative chapters. Getting into part 1, the blade itself incites to deeds of violence. Homer. I am curious what Joe thinks about the pen being mightier than the sword when he quotes Homer like this. I think that this is a very interesting moment, and again, we're going to come back to it. So let's discuss all of these different rapid fire sentences I just yelled at you. Let's go back to the top. Let's see what we got. A tree root hit Logan in the head hard and made his ears ring. Head count number 1. Knocked the sense out of his head. Head count number 2. He hit his head hard on the water. Logan Nine Fingers is going to be an unreliable narrator, and we're going to be discussing how the subversion of writing technique in the first law subverts Logan Nine Fingers as an unreliable narrator, and what the tool of using Logan as an unreliable narrator does for the story. In chapter 1, what we get is that Logan Nine Fingers has a series of quotes. I'm still alive. Say one thing for Logan Nine Fingers. This is where we also get that Logan has no choice at all. Choices make themselves for Logan. This is going to be where Logan gaslights himself of stuff that is find-outable, not true, and things that he should be able to defend himself against. This is going to be where we really discuss Logan's introduction as an unreliable narrator, not for the first read-through, but for the second, third, fourth read-through. As we go into chapter 1, we can see that he still had his knife in the sheath at his belt. Logan didn't know where his knife was in the prologue when he was fighting Lashenka. Reason is because he hit his head hard on that tree root. He was disoriented. But we, the readers, just didn't know how disoriented he was. We have to take Logan's word, albeit third person point of view Logan, but we have to take Logan's word for how he's doing. And Logan got hit hard. Knife was on his waistline. Normally is. The next thing that we're going to be looking at is the rivers all flowed north, from the mountains to the cold sea. Follow the river southwards against the current. We're going to be cutting to a map real quick in which I'm going to be showing why this is untrue. If we're at this point, then I succeeded in doing what I thought I was doing. Okay, for the millionth time. The north is at the top of the map. That means we can assume that the south is at the bottom of the map. This is important. This is important for a couple of reasons. The first is that this map reads standardly. It follows cardinal directions. That means that when we zoom in and we look at the top part of that map, and we look at where the high places are, there's two rivers. There's the river that is at the border of England, and then there's this other river that touches the high places near the headwaters. We have a problem, regardless of whether or not we can use our deduction skills to know that it's the latter that Logan is staying nearby. That river runs from north to south. The headwaters up by the high places towards the north, towards the top of the map. That's where a river starts. Same thing with the river on the border of England. Look at that river. The headwaters are to the north, towards the top. That means that this sentence is wrong. So is Joe wrong because he just lost track of another subversion and forgot that one of his rivers needs to flow that way towards the north end of the map? Or is Logan an unreliable narrator? And this is the first of many fallacies, subverted, hidden, concealed in the sea of fallacies, the one fallacy to rule them all. Is this a mistake? Or is Logan an unreliable narrator? So why the fuck can Logan Nine Fingers eventually get himself out of a forest and head to the high places if he doesn't know north from south? Why is he not able to track the current of the water? Why is he getting the direction of a river wrong? Why is this subversion, this oppositeness that Joe consistently does within the first law, why is it here and why is it incorrect according to its own lore? In addition to that, I've got this paragraph that I have a question about. No, he said it quietly under his breath. He knew better than that. There had been a lot of flatheads. An awful lot. He had no idea how long he'd lain on the riverbank. Even if a couple of boys had gotten away, the Shanka would be hunting them down in the forest. They were nothing but corpses now, for sure, scattered across the high valleys. All Logan could do was make for the mountains and try to save his own sorry life. You have to be realistic. Have to be. However much it hurts. There's a lot wrong with this paragraph. Number one, in order to go from forest to high places, you have to go through high valleys, right? So they're either in the high valleys right now or they're in the forest and they ran through the high valleys to get to the high places. Logan, regardless of which direction they ran, should have been able to track everybody's footprints. Did you forget that it was wet? That there was snow and slush and mud on the ground? And wet pine needles? Now, I'm not saying that I am an avid outdoorsman, but I do identify scat. It's a weird hobby, but I grew up doing it because there were predators in the area. Another thing I can do is look at footprints, especially in wet snow and or mud. So my question is why can't Logan Nine Fingers track footprints in snow, mud, something wet? Something in which his friends are running hard and leaving deep, heavy footprints. Why Can he not do that for the Shenka, the pig people? Why is he unable to track in these conditions? In addition to that, there had been an awful lot of Shenka. How many is an awful lot? Because before we had something else. It would take more than a few flatheads to put an end to Logan Nine Fingers. So in the prologue, Logan, just after getting his head hit for the first time, thinks that there's a few flatheads. And he's ready to fight. He can do this. It'd take him more than a couple of them, but, this is his turf. This is his stomping grounds. He's still in control in this moment. So my question again is, there had been an awful lot of flatheads. An awful lot. Why is Logan no longer caring for his buddies? Is it because Logan is an unreliable narrator and not himself right now? Is it because Joe Abercrombie is a bad writer? Is it because Logan is a bad person and doesn't care about people who care about him? Another thing that is wrong with this paragraph is that it's untrue. We know that the survivors in the title is not a reference to him in the pot. It's not a reference to Logan and the pot being the only survivors. It's the irony of rereading it and knowing that Logan knew better. Logan knew not to track footprints in wet snow and or mud because he's got CPTSD. He's searched the wreckage before. He's looked for his wife and kids in a burned out village. And he knows what he's going to find. He just knows it. You see, Logan Nine Fingers is an unreliable narrator, not because he is hit in the head a lot, not because he has DID, not because he's a bad man, but the intersection of these ideas, and because Logan doesn't want to own up to who he is and what he's done. Logan can't do that every day. He can't wake up and choose to be better every day. Logan's an unreliable narrator because he falls into the little lies that he tells himself. No, he said it quietly under his breath. He knew better than that. There had been a lot of flatheads, an awful lot. He had no idea how long he'd lain on that riverbank. Even if a couple of the boys had got away, the Shenka would be hunting them down in the forests. They would be nothing but corpses now for sure, scattered across the high valleys. All Logan could do was make for the mountains and try to save his own sorry life. You have to be realistic. Have to be. No matter how much it hurts. So, the problem, again, with this is that it's untrue. He's gaslighting himself. Logan is falling for a lie that he's telling himself. Consistency-wise, in the prologue, Logan said that it would take more than a few flatheads to take him out. So now there are a lot, enough to be concerned about, enough to let his buddies be hunted down one by a pack of them. Again, Logan's an intersection of things. But at what point do we consider this intersection to be problematic? And ultimately, where are we going? Why are we going there? What is Joe trying to communicate? Now, I am one of the opinion that authorial intent is like use toilet paper. You can use it, but at your own detriment. that being said, I am also a hypocrite. So when you watch Joe's interviews and you listen to what Joe likes to say about what he intended when he was writing the first law, he likes to hear their voices. Their voices. He likes to hear the voices of the characters. I'm going to call bullshit. I think that Joe likes plotting and planning and mapping. I think that Joe likes intricacies. I think that character voice is incidental in the way that he constructs his characters. But because he is so structured in the way that he constructs characters, it also means that we can identify different components that build the character, different motifs, different ideologies. If Logan Ninefingers is an unreliable narrator, what tool is he in building the house that is the first law? And if he's not an unreliable narrator, what that says for Joe's ability to write, his ability to edit. This is what we will be discussing in my video series on the first law.